Today we begin the book of Genesis, a new series of online lessons from the Bible Institute. Genesis is definitely one of my favorite books for many reasons, and one of them is its ambiguity. It's a mysterious book. What would it be like if you were someone like my grandfather who'd never been inside a church, and then one day when he was 15, he got his hands on a Bible and started to read it? Imagine if you'd never read the Bible or even heard about it. And then you open to the first page and begin reading. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Boom! The opening sentence is like a slap in the face. It's different from any other book you've ever read before. Think about the opening line of King Arthur. King Vortigern, the usurper, sat upon his throne in London. You've already got a person and a place and a backstory. It's quite astounding. Even books that are as old or older than Genesis, it's the same thing as King Arthur. Gilgamesh went abroad in the world, but he met with none who could withstand his arms till he came to Uruk. Everything's already there. People and places and cities and the world. But the Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It starts with no context. Where was this? When was this? There appears to be no time and no place. All we have is a who. Who was this? God. The Bible doesn't begin by defining God or proving that he exists. It presupposes him. In the beginning, God. The Bible starts with the assumption that God is there and that he created the world. He doesn't need to prove himself to us. Now, if we humans get to decide what is true, or at least if we each get to decide what's true for me, if that's the case, then we sit in judgment over God, determining whether or not he exists. If that's the case, then maybe the Bible should start with some philosophical proofs or arguments of his existence. But it doesn't. God simply is. In the beginning, God. He is not the object which we evaluate. He is the creator who made us. He is the subject. We are the object. Grammatically speaking. And God made everything that is non-God. In other words, God is self-sufficient. Everything else is dependent on him. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Verse 1 functions somewhat like a newspaper headline. God made everything. And what was it like when he first started making them? Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Think of this as a lump of clay, the raw materials which God shapes into the universe. This raises some questions. Why make the raw material first and then shape it into the good world? Why not just create each part ex nihilo, out of nothing? Why not just say, let there be land, oceans, stars? For that matter, why not just snap his fingers and make it all with one thought? Well, he doesn't tell us his reasons for doing it the way he did, but he obviously wants us to know some of the details about how he did it. And one of those details is that before God forms the land and the sea and the sky and then fills them with life, before he does that, he has a mass of raw materials which he makes it out of. Let's take another look at that raw material. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. We cannot imagine an emptiness and a shapelessness. Now, darkness and watery depth, we're getting some kind of vague mental image. But the point is, it doesn't have an image because it's all chaos and shapelessness and emptiness and darkness. And there's nothing solid to focus on and no time or place from which to observe this stuff. You'd have to somehow hover amongst it. The word that fits the least here is the water, because as modern people, we kind of think of the ocean as like a fun vacation place. It's not automatically a negative word to us, but it was a negative word to them. In ancient times, especially in the Middle East, the sea was not a good thing. It was wild and chaotic and unpredictable. And into this chaos, God speaks. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. It's important to note that God creates by His words. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. There was evening, and there was morning, one day. So out of this chaos, we have God creating things that are good. He creates light and time, and He separates and arranges and orders, and He names things. So as this account goes on, you get these repeated themes. God keeps speaking, which creates things, and naming things, and seeing that what He made is good. God is making an ordered world out of chaos. Remember, it was formless and empty. As He goes on, He forms and fills the world. Here's a helpful diagram of the week of creation. Notice all the separation, organizing, arranging. Notice that on the left side, days 1, 2, and 3, He forms things. And on the right side, days 4, 5, and 6, He fills them. It's the opposite of the chaotic, formless, and empty. From lifeless chaos, He creates ordered life. Notice that on the left, the created things are immovable, and on the right, the created things all move. And the moving things get progressively more free in their movement. The heavenly bodies move in set paths. The fish and birds and beasts do not have set paths, but their paths are bound by their domains, sea, sky, and earth. And their paths are also bound by their instincts. Lastly, mankind, the pinnacle of creation, is the most free in his motion. Man is the only created thing that can leave his path, i.e., do what he's not supposed to do. Mankind is bound by some things, bound by his needs, and bound to the land, and bound by God's commands. But we're constantly finding ways to break our bonds. We've entered the sea and the air, and we've even entered the heavens in 1961. And every day, each one of us breaks God's commands. The heavenly bodies, the sun, moon, and the stars, ancient man wanted to worship them. Modern man wants to conquer them, which is a way of worshiping himself. Genesis, however, wants us to stand in wonder and reverence at the unreachable beauties of the heavens, and yet worship only God. The text is very careful to avoid sounding like other ancient religions in which the sun and moon and the sea are gods. This chapter purposefully avoids using these words by saying greater light for sun and saying seas plural instead of sea, because sea was the name of the sea god, and moon was the name of the moon god, and sun was the name of the sun god. The sun is obviously the most glorious of the heavenly bodies. It provides light to see and work. It provides warmth. It makes plants grow for food, which sustains life. It's huge and powerful and beautiful and seemingly eternal. Because of all this, the sun was an especially tempting object of worship. So Genesis chapter 1 especially demotes the sun. Think about the order of the 6 days. There's light without the sun. There are mornings without a sunrise. There are days and time without the sun. There are plants without the sun. The point is, light and warmth and food and life don't come from the sun. They come from God. Worship Him. The sun is amazing, but God made it. And He gave it a task, a purpose, to tell time and to give light. All the things on the right side, the things created on days 4, 5, and 6, are given jobs or tasks. The heavenly bodies are to tell the months and years and days. And the birds and the fish are to fill the sea and the sky. And mankind is to rule. It all builds towards life and goodness and order. And mankind ruling it all should have been the source and preservation of order. We would have been co-rulers with God over the amazingly rich and vibrant world He made. But we made a different choice. We left God's path for us, and we went our own way. Of course, in the next few chapters, Genesis shows how our way leads to death and murder and war and destruction and chaos. Those things are the fruit of sin. But its root is going your own way. Your way might be morally decent, but until you submit to God's rule, you are living in rebellion against Him. And the only hope of being forgiven for this rebellion is what Jesus Christ did for you on the cross, getting punished in your place, paying for your sins.